Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a world of sun-baked stone courtyards, rustling palm fronds, and very high-stakes foot care. That's right, you're about to spend 24 golden-lit hours as the Pharaoh's personal pedicurist. A title that's not exactly glamorous, until you realize you work about 10 feet from the divine ruler of all Egypt, wielding obsidian blades and scented oils on the most politically important feet this side of the Nile. You might think it's a cushy job. You'd be wrong. You'll spend most of your time crouched, sweating, and praying you don't nick a royal cuticle. You'll carry jars that cost more than a priest's house, and you'll be surrounded by servants, diplomats, spies, and possibly one goose with a grudge. And honestly, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you tuning in from, and what time is it for you? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the sun even begins to yawn over the limestone rooftops of Thebes. It's still dark, save for the flicker of an oil lamp in the hallway. Somewhere outside, an ibis screeches, clearly unbothered by your chronic lack of sleep. You roll off your woven mat, groaning like a creaky cartwheel, and immediately regret the 10 toes you massaged yesterday. Knees? Cracking. Spine? Debating its contract. You share a small mud-brick chamber with 3 other palace staffers. One of them is already up, lacing his sandals with the kind of grim determination usually reserved for people heading into battle or very long religious ceremonies. The other 2 are snoring in harmony, heads wrapped in linen like little burritos of exhaustion. You pull on your tunic, plain linen, washed in river water, sun-dried on a line beside the kitchen courtyard. It smells faintly of lentils and incense, a good sign. It means the kitchen fire didn't burn down your laundry again. Your satchel is packed and ready. You did that last night, of course, like a responsible servant with minor control issues. You peek inside it to double-check. Polished pumice, copper tools, a half-used jar of calendula balm, and a small obsidian scraper so sharp it once shaved your uncle's beard clean off in a single stroke. Good times. You sling the satchel over your shoulder and tiptoe through the hallway, avoiding the creaky plank that alerts old Nefer in the next room. She's a linen folder with ears like a hawk and gossip sharper than your blades. If she catches you, she'll tell you again about the time she folded a temple priest's robes so perfectly he cried. Outside, the air is cool and dry. Stars still linger faintly in the west, slowly blinking out as dawn gathers like a sleepy yawn across the sky. You follow the worn footpath from the servants' quarters toward the palace, passing a sleepy stable hand brushing down a donkey. He gives you a nod. You respond with a finger wiggle, your version of a wave when your hand still aches from yesterday's pedicure marathon. The palace looms ahead, an elegant sprawl of painted columns, sun-baked courtyards, and towering doorways designed to make even the highest noble feel mildly intimidated. It's not fully awake yet. You can hear someone yawning inside. Maybe a junior scribe. Maybe a guard who's been posted near the water garden all night and is trying not to fall in. You turn the corner into the courtyard near the servants' workshop, where the linen folders, oil mixers, sandal cleaners, and other extremely niche professionals like yourself gather. A few others have arrived. Some are hunched over benches, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Others are already gossiping over bowls of cold barley mash. A woman named Murdy waves you over. She's the palace's sandal tailor, and she smells perpetually of leather glue and pride. You hear about the Queen's rose oil? She whispers, pushing a fig into your hand. Gone. Vanished. Just poof. She nearly bit a servant in half. You raise an eyebrow. Was it one of the dancers? Could be. She lowers her voice to a dramatic whisper. Could also be the priest's apprentice. The short one. Always smells like beetroot. He's been loitering around the perfume cellar like a cat near a fish basket. You nod solemnly. In the palace, theft of rose oil is practically a declaration of war. It's also a handy way to end up polishing statues for the next 4 months. Someone claps loudly, signaling the day's duties are beginning. The courtyard shifts as everyone grabs their gear. You check your satchel again, just in case a tool has mysteriously vanished. Everything's there, including the odd little amulet your aunt swore would bring steady hands and docile feet. You keep it mostly out of superstition. Also, because it jingles just slightly when you walk and you like the rhythm. As you fall into line behind a basket weaver and a towel boy, you spot a new scroll pinned to the courtyard wall. It lists duties for the day, scrawled in hieratic shorthand that only half the staff can actually read. Your name sits near the top, assigned to Divine Petal Grooming Primary. That's Pharaoh speak for, you're on toe duty today. You exhale equal parts dread and pride. A direct appointment with the Pharaoh means visibility, whispers, and possibly a plate of pomegranate seeds from the royal table if you do well. Of course, it also means that one slip of the blade, one overzealous buff, and you might find yourself reassigned to sewage channel scrubbing again. The sun peaks over the horizon as the palace gates open with a slow creak. Time to head in, tools in hand, stomach growling, and hopes moderately intact. Ahead lies marble floors, polished sandals, and the most intimidating pair of feet in the ancient world. And yes, they're expecting you. You shuffle forward with the rest of the early morning crew, past the palace's towering columns etched with lotus blossoms and names of long-dead kings. The sandstone under your feet is already warming in the rising sun. Somewhere, a harpist begins plucking notes that float across the courtyard like drowsy bees. You pass under the colonnade, nodding politely to the bronze-plated statue of the pharaoh's grandmother, an intimidating woman who reportedly once silenced an entire courtroom by coughing. Inside the servants' vestibule, the air cools slightly. A breeze flows through narrow windows, carrying the familiar scent of frankincense and... is that stewed lentils? Someone's breakfast is going to be disappointing and heavily seasoned. You duck into the grooming room, a quiet, low-lit space nestled between the perfumer's alcove and the linen folding hall. This is your home base, your prep zone, your haven of tiny tools and whispered scandal. It smells of beeswax, old wood, and a hint of sandalwood that never quite fades from the shelves. Your first task: inspect the sandal queue. Yes, there's a queue, because royal feet never touch bare ground unless absolutely necessary, and even then, someone probably gets blamed for it. Every day, a line of sandals must be assessed for wear and polish, especially those intended for the pharaoh's use. You peer into the wicker bin of footwear. It's a mixed bag today. One gold-leafed pair from ceremonial use, a scuffed papyrus sole number, probably worn during yesterday's crocodile viewing outing, and a ridiculous pair with curled toes that always makes you suspicious someone in the design workshop is trolling royalty. You lift each sandal carefully, holding it to the light, examining for loose stitching or signs of cracked lacquer. A cracked strap is a crisis. A bent anklet loop, career ending. You set 2 pairs aside for urgent repairs and quietly mutter a blessing over the rest. As you work, the door creaks open and in slips Seamut, a junior aromatics assistant with a permanent case of drama face. He fans himself like he's personally responsible for moving all the air in the room. You heard about the dancer who fainted yesterday? He begins, without so much as a hello. No, but you're going to tell me anyway. You reply, holding a sandal up to your ear like you're checking it for whispers. She passed out right during the sacred hip roll. Just thud onto the mosaic. Some say it was sunstroke. Others... He lowers his voice dramatically. Say it was a cursed amulet gifted by a foreign envoy. You pause, glance at your own satchel, and casually nudge your jingling foot amulet deeper inside, just in case. Also, Seamut continues, now examining his fingernails. The queen was not pleased about the delay. I heard she summoned 3 footbearers and made them all polish her ankles out of sheer frustration. Sounds like a productive use of labor. You mutter, resisting the urge to roll your eyes. You're all just cogs in the world's most perfumed wheel. The gossip is as endless as the Nile. Who fell out of favor? Who might be pregnant? Who's definitely building a secret tomb out near the goat fields? Half of it is nonsense. The other half will become state policy by next week. Still, you listen. You always listen. Pedicurists, like cupbearers and hairdressers, hear more than most and speak far less. That's why the palace keeps you close, but not too close. There's a fine line between useful and disposable when you're kneeling at someone's feet. The bell sounds, soft and low, 3 tones echoing down the corridor. It's time. You gather your toolkit, sling your satchel onto your shoulder, and follow the procession of foot care specialists, hair braiders, and ceremonial eyeliner artists heading toward the inner court. It's like a fashion show for specialists in niche bodily maintenance. The walk through the palace is an obstacle course of grandeur. Painted frescoes line the halls. Scenes of boats, battles, divine cows, and the occasional implausibly large fish. Sunlight spills in through carved window screens, painting everything in golden stripes. You step around 2 arguing scribes, narrowly avoid bumping into a dwarf priest carrying a tray of goose eggs, and just miss slipping on what might be lotus petals or yesterday's poorly cleaned incense ash. Ahead of you, a goose waddles across the tiled floor with the smug entitlement of an official with tenure. You stop. You know this goose. Her name is Sadet, and she belongs to the princess. Last week, she bit a man's sandal off and strutted around with it for 10 minutes. You both freeze, eyeing each other like rival generals. She makes a low hissing sound. You take a cautious step back. The man behind you snorts. "Still scared of her feathered highness?" he whispers. "Not scared," you whisper back, respectfully cautious. You take the long route to avoid her. This adds 2 minutes to your trip but saves your dignity. Probably. As you enter the marble-floored vestibule leading to the Pharaoh's private quarters, a hush falls over the crowd. There's something different about the silence here. It's not just quiet. It's curated. Even the birds outside seem to chirp more respectfully. You pause at the final threshold. This is the last place you're allowed to breathe deeply before stepping into divinity's shadow. One final check. Satchel, sandals, spine aligned. You smooth the wrinkles from your tunic, stand up straighter, and step into the light. And there it is, the beginning of a day so carefully orchestrated, so loaded with protocol and hidden meanings, that even a toenail can become a matter of national concern. You take a breath, letting the scent of lotus and dust settle in your nose. Welcome to the Pharaoh's world. Time to serve. The hallway narrows, but the ceiling arches high above your head, painted in deep cobalt blue and flecked with tiny golden stars. As you step beneath it, the floor changes from simple tile to polished alabaster, so smooth your sandals squeak softly with each careful step. You keep your eyes slightly lowered, not out of fear, but because once, early in your career, you tripped on your own feet while gawking at a mural of Hathor playing a tambourine. It wasn't your finest moment. A fan-bearer glides past, palms outstretched, holding a palm frond nearly the length of a small boat. You offer a respectful nod. He ignores you entirely, but you know he saw. Palace etiquette. Always looking, rarely acknowledging. You've nearly reached the inner court when the great sandstone door opens silently, revealing a private garden nestled between columns. The path ahead winds through flowering papyrus, low fountains that bubble with absurd serenity, and rows of date palms casting latticework shadows across the floor. This is the pre-court space, an architectural sigh before the grandeur. A few priests wander quietly, heads bowed, murmuring their daily chants to the gods of breath and balance. One of them pauses to tie his sandal. You make a mental note of the knot he uses. It's neater than yours, and your clients deserve symmetrical ankles. Beyond the fountain lies the entry to the Pharaoh's inner court. 2 guards stand flanking the archway, spears upright, gazes unfocused in that special way that suggests intense boredom cloaked in reverence. You approach slowly, bowing your head slightly as you pass between them. Neither moves. You wonder if they even blink anymore. The moment you step into the inner court, the atmosphere changes. Sound softens. Time stretches. The light itself seems more golden, diffused through hanging linen screens and slow-burning censers of myrrh and cinnamon. You're not in a room, you're inside a ritual. And then you see it, the Pharaoh's canopy bed, draped in embroidered linen and shaded by ostrich feather fans gently swung by 2 nearly silent attendants. He lies reclined on a carved cedar couch with gold leaf inlay, sipping something from a goblet so elaborately encrusted with gems that it practically deserves its own priest. He's not looking at you. He rarely does. Instead, His gaze is fixed on a young girl juggling lemons just outside the edge of the canopy. Entertainment, breakfast, and body care are all part of the morning sequence. You stop 6 paces from the couch and kneel, left knee first, right foot tucked under. One hand to your chest, a bow of respect and readiness. You do not speak unless spoken to. The protocol here is so delicate it could shatter like a dropped perfume bottle. A chamberlain, one you know by voice more than sight, softly announces your presence. The feet of the divine body shall now be tended by the touch of skilled hands. He intones, like a man announcing a lunar eclipse. A few attendants shuffle sideways to make space. You rise and approach slowly. The pharaoh shifts, one leg extending toward a low stool already cushioned with embroidered linen. And there they are, the royal feet. They are feet, not glowing, not humming with divine energy, just slightly dusty, slightly calloused feet. But they are his feet, the living Horus, master of Upper and Lower Egypt, eternal ruler of sandals and socks, had socks existed. You kneel again, this time close enough to work. From your satchel, you draw out a fine linen cloth, soaked in rose water and cooled with lotus extract. Gently, you begin to wipe away the dust of sleep. The pharaoh sighs. You glance up. His eyes are still on the lemon juggler. Good. His toes are long and elegant, but the left pinky is a bit swollen, possibly from yesterday's ceremonial dance walk across the temple mosaics. That happens. Mosaic foot is a real thing. You file the note away for later. The job requires precision. You begin with the cuticles, using a porcupine quill to nudge them back. An odd choice, but the pharaoh once declared them ticklish in a pleasing way. So now it's protocol. Your hands move smoothly, methodically, and always in rhythm with the soft plucking of the harpist somewhere behind you. The aroma of frankincense drifts in. The air is heavy with the perfume of a nearby flower basin, lotus and marjoram, if your nose is to be trusted. You glance briefly at the painted ceiling, watching a golden falcon soar across a patch of sky so detailed it almost flutters. As you scrape gently at a callous spot on the heel, the pharaoh finally speaks. I dreamt of lions, he says. You pause only slightly. This could be literal, could be metaphorical, could be a trap. Were they roaring or lounging, my lord? You ask, keeping your voice low, smooth, appropriately reverent but not obsequious. Both, he replies. But one of them wore a crown. A mistake, perhaps. The others did not approve. Dreams speak in puzzles. You murmur, now applying calendula balm to the arch. Some lions are kings. Others merely roar like them. He chuckles. A soft sound, like sand sifting through silk, is probably the highest praise you'll get all week. He shifts his foot slightly. You continue buffing, now with a soft pad of linen stitched with thread blessed by a priest of Ma'at. Whether that helps or not is anyone's guess. But you find the motion soothing, like polishing a sacred vase, or a very demanding squash. As you work, a chamberlain leans in to whisper something in the pharaoh's ear. You catch the word grain and something about elephant ivory. Nothing scandalous, just daily politics delivered quietly while you kneel inches away, pretending to focus solely on toe curvature. Historians still argue whether pedicurists like you were considered mere servants or minor court officials. The line is blurred. You wield tiny knives, sure, but in rooms where few are admitted, with ears always open and tongues tightly sealed. After all, who listens better than the one at your feet? You ease back on your heels for a moment, giving your fingers a discreet stretch behind your satchel. The pharaoh's feet are done for now. But this is only the beginning of your duties in the inner court. You haven't even broken out the obsidian yet. The chamberlain gives a tiny, imperceptible nod, and you shift into the second phase, tool selection. From your satchel, you unfold your cloth wrap, your pride and joy. Every instrument is laid in a specific order. There's the sliver-thin obsidian blade, honed so sharp it can split a hair lengthwise. The copper spoon for debris beneath the nails. The pumice puck, worn smooth in the middle from hundreds of circular motions. And your favorite, the goose feather buffer, delicate and utterly useless except for show. Clients love it. You give the tools a quiet once-over, inspecting for signs of wear. A pedicurist's blade must glide like a fish, not scrape like a dried reed. You give yours a casual kiss for luck and tuck it into your hand. Then there's the polishing paste. You pull out 3 tiny jars, each carefully sealed with beeswax and wrapped in linen. The first contains a balm of date, pit ash, and goat fat. The second, an imported frankincense cream meant for divine extremities only. And the third, your own concoction, is a blend of crushed pearl, lotus oil, and just the tiniest pinch of Nile silt. It smells like wealth and wet earth. You dab a bit behind your ear sometimes. No one needs to know. Next, the brushes. You've got one carved from fishbone, another made of bundled papyrus stalks, and the weird one your cousin gifted you, crafted from porcupine hair and attached to a cat figurine. You bring it along for luck, even though it works more like a tickler than a tool. Still, Pharaoh once laughed when you used it. That counts for something. Historians still debate whether royal grooming tools were standardized or personalized. Some believe there was an official foot kit of the 2 lands, passed down between generations. Others argue each pedicurist curated their own set, adapting for trends, phobias, and sandal season. You personally believe in the second theory, mostly because you've made your kit uniquely yours. No one else carries a footpick shaped like a scarab beetle. That's your thing. As you polish the last bit of the Pharaoh's heel, the harpist changes tune, something lighter, playful. A small tray appears beside you, pomegranate seeds, a slice of honeyed bread, and a ceramic cup of cold barley water. A gift from the royal kitchen. You try not to smile too obviously. You weren't sure he'd notice your work, but he always does, in the way powerful people pretend not to. Still kneeling, you lift the barley water and take a grateful sip. It's cold enough to make your molars ache. You sneak a glance at the Pharaoh. He's now lazily tossing a seed at the juggler, who catches it in her mouth without missing a beat. Show off. You tuck your tools back into the satchel with care. Always left to right, sharpest to softest. The balm jars go in last, wrapped in fresh linen so the scents don't blend. One time you forgot and your rose lotus blend ended up smelling like fermented fish. Never again. As you rise to your feet, knees quietly creaking in protest, a runner appears at the doorway. He's out of breath, cheeks flushed. Urgent scroll for the vizier. The boy whispers to the chamberlain. The vizier, who's standing discreetly behind a curtain, pretending to admire a painted ibis, steps forward to accept the scroll. His eyebrows twitch. His gaze darts toward you. Oh. You bow politely, then back away. Whatever's in that scroll, you don't want to be part of it. You exit the inner court slowly, your steps soft against the alabaster floor, tools humming a soft clink in your satchel. Outside the door, you exhale fully for the first time in an hour. The world feels louder again. More real. Pigeon flutters overhead. A sandal maker is arguing with a linen boy about stitch width. You relax your shoulders. Your fingers feel slightly stiff, but your work is clean. You didn't nick anything, the polish gleamed, and the Pharaoh chuckled. That, in your world, is a perfect score. You stop by a low bench near a fountain to sort your kit. The obsidian blade gets rewrapped in silk. The porcupine quill goes in its special pouch. There's only one like it in the entire staff quarters, and you'll wrestle anyone who tries to borrow it again. You glance down at your tunic. Somehow, one drop of calendula balm has landed squarely on your lap, just where it looks the most suspicious. You sigh. No one will believe it's balm. You grab a bit of fountain water and try to rub it out. Congratulations, you now smell like wet linen and foot cream. A familiar voice pipes up. You've got the vizier's wife next, right? It's Murdy again, arms full of beaded sandal straps. You groan theatrically. I was hoping for a nap. Ha! She laughs. She twisted her toe doing moon salutations at the roof shrine. Wanted to impress the gods. I guess she impressed her pinky toe straight into a bandage. You groan again, but your eyes are already searching your satchel. Bandage balm, cooling paste, tiny ceremonial anklet to distract her while you realign her expectations. A new foot, a new challenge, a new opportunity to make someone feel divine from the ankles down. You stand, squaring your shoulders, ignoring the slight crunch in your spine. The day isn't even half over. Time to march on. The trek from the fountain to the vizier's wife's private quarters is short but psychologically treacherous. You pass through the hall of papyrus columns, where scribes glide like anxious herons, quills at the ready, scrolls tucked into the folds of their belts like intellectual weaponry. The scent here is a blend of fresh ink, perfumed wax, and the faint but ever-present hint of anxiety. No one scurries quite like a scribe late to dictation. You pause briefly at the bronze doors of Lady Nefret's chamber. You've only been called here a few times before, and never under such urgent-sounding pretenses. One of her attendants opens the door just wide enough for one eye and an exaggerated sigh. She's waiting. She's in a mood. Of course she is. You step inside. Lady Nefret lounges dramatically on a pile of imported linen cushions, swaddled in a caftan so gold-threaded it could blind a priest at high noon. Her left foot rests on an ivory footstool, delicately wrapped in gauze. The toe in question, her pinky, is bandaged to a heroic extent. You're half convinced it's also been blessed, cursed, and serenaded. You kneel without a word, assuming the position of someone who has seen far too many minor injuries inflated into national tragedies. She glances at you over a fan shaped like a fig leaf. "Be gentle," she purrs. "It was a spiritual injury." "Of course, my lady," you reply softly, unwrapping your tools. You begin the unbandaging with the same care you'd use on a sacred relic, or a cat in a bad mood. The toe is slightly swollen, a touch red, but in no way spiritually ruptured. Still, you make a tiny sound to show respect for her perceived sacrifice. "I was praying," she says, eyes closed. "On the moon tiles. The stars were very bright. The gods were listening. And then your foot stopped listening?" You offer gently. She cracks one eye open. "Exactly." You prepare a cooling compress from your balm jar, dabbing the mixture of lotus resin and mint oil along the toe with your linen-wrapped finger. The aroma immediately fills the room with soothing, if slightly overpowering, sweetness. Nefret sighs and flutters her fan. Her mood begins to thaw. "Do you know what I told the vizier?" she whispers. "You don't. But you know better than to say no." "I told him," she continues, "that if he didn't import better prayer sandals, I would send a note to the Queen." "Ah, the Queen. That explains everything." You suppress a smirk and nod solemnly as if you've just received news of a minor political coup. Nefret continues speaking as you massage the tension from her arch, sliding your fingers gently under the pad of her foot. Her skin smells faintly of rose and possibly smugness. While her foot relaxes, she talks. About her rival's anklet clashing with a temple robe. About a disastrous date palm jam from last week's banquet. About a priest who, according to her, mispronounced the god Thoth's name and caused a minor heatwave. This is where your true training shows, not in how you buff a heel, but how you absorb a stream of elite nonsense with serene, affirming noises. You are, effectively, a diplomat who works in cuticles. As you apply a final layer of soft wax to her sole, she lowers her fan and speaks with a sudden shift in tone. "Did you hear," she murmurs, "about the foreign envoy who fainted at the stables?" You shake your head. "He claimed the sun was too strong, but some think he was poisoned. Subtly, politely, possibly through figs." You pause. The fig you ate earlier suddenly feels treacherous. You make a mental note to chew slower from now on. "Keep your ears open," she adds, tapping her newly waxed heel with a satisfied click. "You hear things." The double meaning hangs in the air like incense smoke. When you're finished, she sighs contentedly and reclines deeper into her cushioned nest. Her attendants flutter in to rebandage her toe with the kind of ceremony usually reserved for funerals or new haircuts. You pack your tools swiftly, quietly. As you sling your satchel over your shoulder, she waves one finger languidly. "You're very skilled. The Pharaoh should give you a title." You bow low. "Your words are already a blessing, my lady." She smiles faintly. You exit, walking backward the appropriate number of steps before turning into the corridor. Outside, you exhale so hard it feels like your ribs deflate. That woman could build a pyramid out of passive aggression alone. You head back toward the common corridor, past a row of open archways overlooking the royal lotus ponds. Ducks paddle lazily among the blooms. You notice one has a ribbon tied around its neck. You don't ask. A passing sandal boy gives you a look of pity. She cried last week over a cracked toenail, he says, not bothering to specify who. He doesn't have to. You find a small alcove behind the laundry court where you can sit and finally massage your own feet. The irony never stops being funny. You, the greatest pedicurist in Thebes, have cracked heels from stone floors and sandals older than your cousin's marriage contract. Historians still argue whether royal staff ever had dedicated grooming time for themselves. Most agree it was unofficial at best, stolen in brief quiet moments like this, behind a linen screen or beside an empty fountain. If you're caught, you just say you're testing the product. You take out the tiniest sliver of fig cake from your tunic, squished but still edible, and eat it in 2 careful bites. And then it's back to work, because the next name on the scroll, a diplomat from Nubia, and rumor says he wears toe rings. The Nubian diplomat is waiting by the shaded colonnade just outside the incense garden, flanked by 2 aides and an impressive number of decorative feathers. His robes are deep red, embroidered with what looks like ivory beads. His beard is carefully plaited into 3 points, each bound with gold wire. He has the air of a man who knows he's important, and probably dreams in praise hymns about himself. You approach with the practiced neutrality of a seasoned court servant, neither fawning nor casual. You're a pedicurist, not a bard, and you have no time to flatter a man whose toes might be described as philosophically challenging. He sits on a low stone bench, crossing one leg and lifting the other like he's been doing this for years, which, to be fair, he probably has. His left foot emerges from its sandal with a flourish, and there it is, not 1, but 3 toe rings. One of them has a tiny scarab carved into it. Another is shaped like a lion mouth agape. The third one is suspiciously green. Maybe turquoise? Maybe oxidized copper? Maybe mold? You kneel before him, pulling out your tools and setting them neatly on a folding cloth beside his feet. He doesn't speak right away. Instead, he observes you, expression unreadable. One of his aides hands him a slice of honeyed melon on a stick. He eats it without blinking. You begin by inspecting the toe rings. 2 come off easily with a little oil and patience. The third, the greenish one, is not going anywhere without a negotiation. You dab more oil around the band and gently wiggle. It stays put, like a drunk guest refusing to leave the banquet. You may use a blade, the diplomat says, in a voice like river stone. Carefully, you nod, retrieving your obsidian tool with the same solemnity someone might use to retrieve a sacred scroll. You press gently at the edge of the ring, easing it around the swelling. Eventually, with a little prayer and a lot of sweat, the stubborn ornament slides free. You set it on the cloth like a dangerous relic. Excellent, he murmurs. Now the soles. Ah yes, the real reason you've been summoned. You begin the exfoliation process with a flat pumice disc, using long, sweeping strokes along his heel and arch. The soles are cracked, but not unmanageable. He probably walks more than the Pharaoh, maybe even climbs things. His feet carry the same story as every diplomat's. Long roads, long speeches, and longer silences. As you work, he finally speaks. You're the one who tends the Pharaoh? I am. He trusts you. You pause briefly before answering. He allows me near his feet. A dangerous place to be. You glance up. He's smiling faintly, but his eyes are sharp. Definitely the type to layer his compliments with riddles. Feet, you reply, are humble, honest. They go where you tell them, but they always remember the path. He seems pleased by that, or at least not displeased. As you switch to the calendula balm, massaging it gently into his arch, he relaxes slightly, shoulders lowering, breath slowing. Diplomats don't get much silence. This might be the first time all day he's stopped calculating. I once knew a healer who said the heel connects directly to the memory, he says. You smile, still kneading gently. Then you must have a very full archive, sir. He chuckles. Or a very sore one. Your hands move instinctively, tracing the points of tension and pressing just enough to soothe but not startle. He closes his eyes. The aides whisper among themselves in a dialect you don't fully understand. One of them glances at you. You pretend not to notice. Historians still argue whether foot care for foreign envoys was part of diplomacy or simply palace hospitality. Some suggest that the act of grooming a diplomat's feet symbolized peace, a tactile treaty. Others believe it was a subtle power play, reminding visitors of their place within the palace hierarchy, even as their toes were being moisturized. You suspect the truth lies somewhere between a compliment and a command. As you finish the massage and begin to replace the toe rings, carefully in the order he removed them, he opens his eyes again. There are whispers, he says softly, of a change in the Nile, a slow shift. You don't answer. You're just the pedicurist after all. But your ears are excellent. He lets the silence linger, then stands with fluid grace. You rise as well, bowing deeply. Your hands, he says, are quiet, but they speak well. Your feet, you reply, are patient listeners. He nods once. Then he turns and walks away, aides trailing behind like respectful shadows. You watch them go, wondering if you'll ever hear what those whispers become. As you gather your tools, a court attendant hurries over. You're needed at the pet pavilion, he says, out of breath. The Pharaoh's goose is limping again. Of course she is. You sigh, sling your satchel over your shoulder, and begin the long walk toward the part of your job that even historians like to pretend didn't exist. The part with the animals. The pet pavilion is nestled behind the northern colonnade, past the royal kitchens and just shy of the sacred fish pond where carp allegedly leap in prophetic patterns. It's a lush space, shaded by sycamore trees and dotted with fine stone enclosures. Birds, cats, and creatures with too much personality for their size lounge here in regal splendor. You've never liked this place. It smells like lavender, hay, and secrets. The animal attendants are friendly enough, but there's a certain intensity in their eyes, like they've stared into the soul of a divine peacock and come out changed. As you approach, the lead animal steward waves you in. He's tall, soft-spoken, and always smells faintly of melon rinds. She's in one of her moods, he whispers. The goose. Of course she is. Her name, you recall, is Sadat, princess-owned, royally entitled, feathers like polished ivory and an attitude that could curdle milk. You find her reclining, yes, reclining, on a silk-covered cushion beside a stone bowl of finely chopped dates. She spots you and immediately hisses, puffing out her chest like you've offended her lineage. You kneel slowly. Good morning, your radiant gooseness. She narrows her eyes. Or maybe that's just how her face works. Either way, the room suddenly feels several degrees more tense. You open your satchel and begin your ritual. No blades, animal protocol forbids it. Instead, you have your blunt bone scrapers, calming oils, and a balm formulated specifically for sensitive avian skin. You also carry a small mirror, not for medical use, just because Sadat enjoys admiring herself mid-treatment. Back left, the steward whispers, pointing, favoring it since yesterday, may have slipped in the temple corridor, or pretended to. You approach her leg like it's booby-trapped. Sadat allows you a single touch before giving a low honk of warning. She's not biting, yet progress. Her foot is fine. No swelling, no obvious injury, just a hint of dryness between the webbing. You begin applying balm with slow, rhythmic strokes, speaking softly in the cadence of temple lullabies. There we go. Just a little love for the foot that rules the courtyard. She leans into it. You glance over. The steward raises his eyebrows. Apparently, you've passed her test. Again, Sadat shifts her other foot forward, almost expectantly. You oblige. 2 foot rubs. As always 2. As you finish, she stretches out her neck and nibbles the edge of your tunic in what might be a sign of respect. Or hunger. You don't ask. Historians still argue whether animals in Pharaoh's court were pampered due to genuine affection or religious obligation. Sacred cats were known to receive burial rites more elaborate than minor nobles. Geese like Sadat, linked to fertility deities, often appeared in ceremonial processions with anklets, perfume, and attendants of their own. There's even a debated scroll from Memphis detailing a feather polisher assigned full-time to a falcon with a temper. You thankfully are not full-time here. After the goose, you're directed to the feline quarters. Royal cats are easier. Slightly. You enter a room bathed in soft light, cushions scattered across the floor like petals. It's silent, save for the gentle patter of paws. 6 cats laze in the warmth, blinking at you like small, judgmental gods. The alpha, a striped tom named Hamu, stretches and pads over to inspect your satchel. You let him sniff. Then, slowly, you begin to examine his claws. They're pristine, of course. Someone, possibly a priest, has already filed them, likely while reciting hymns. You pretend to adjust one claw slightly, just to justify your presence. Hamu sniffs, yawns, and headbutts your knee in royal approval. You offer a dab of oil behind his ears. He licks your finger. You try not to be flattered. The rest of the cats require only glances and affirmations. One allows you to clean her paw with a linen cloth. Another rolls over, exposing a belly trap. You do not fall for it. Your last animal of the hour is a greyhound. Dignified, nervous, named Tra. You meet her in the sun courtyard, where she's already lying in a beam of warmth. A handler whispers. She's shy. Be slow. You sit a few paces away, setting your tools down. After a long moment, Tra sniffs the air, stretches, and trots over. You inspect her paws. Slight cracking, likely from too many marble floors. You apply balm carefully, whispering nonsense as you work. She blinks slowly and rests her head on your lap. For a moment, everything quiets. You forget the diplomacy, the gossip, the politics swirling above your head like kites in the desert wind. It's just a greyhound with sore feet. You linger a few minutes longer than necessary. When you rise, Tra whines softly. You pat her head. Tomorrow, you whisper, if I'm not treating someone's toenail rebellion. Back at your prep bench, you clean your tools. Avian balm goes in one jar. Canine wipes in another. You sprinkle herbs over your satchel to mask the zoo scent you now carry like an accidental perfume. As you close the last lid, a page arrives. Sandal fitting in the court. The Pharaoh wants new pairs tried. You blink. Again, he just had sandals approved last week. But then again, Pharaoh's taste changes like the Nile's moods. You sigh. Time to judge sandals like your life depends on it. Because it just might. The sandal fitting ceremony is held in the upper lotus court, a wide open space flanked by papyrus-shaped columns and a reflecting pool that's mostly decorative but occasionally serves as an emergency birdbath. The court is alive with soft murmurs and the light crunch of polished leather soles on crushed gravel paths. You arrive with your satchel freshly organized and your tunic only slightly rumpled from the goose incident. The attendant at the archway nods at you in recognition. Either you're finally respected, or you've just become that person who always shows up when something odd happens to someone's feet. You'll take it. A small crowd is already gathered. Not spectators, mind you, this is not theater. These are artisans, scribes, sandal crafters, and one very nervous-looking design apprentice who is chewing on a piece of linen like it's his last hope. Laid out on an elevated stone platform are 6 pairs of sandals, each more ornate than the last. One pair is inlaid with lapis lazuli and trimmed with gold wire so fine it probably took a month just to thread. Another pair is made entirely of dyed reeds, shaped into a swirling spiral that looks excellent and probably feels like walking on basketry. The Pharaoh hasn't arrived yet, which means you've got about 6 minutes to inspect the options and discreetly whisper to the steward which ones might draw blood. You kneel by the platform and begin your scan. The lapis pair? Stunning. But the sole curves slightly upward at the arch. Could cause cramping during prolonged processions. The spiral reads, bold choice, but one toe strap is already fraying. Historians still argue whether pharaohs actually wore these ceremonial sandals or just used them as visual props. Some suggest there was a sandal hierarchy, where practical leather was worn daily, while ornamental pairs were only activated during state rituals or overly formal goose parades. You check another pair. Plain white linen straps over a padded sole dyed with pomegranate juice. Surprisingly understated. You test the softness with your thumb, promising they'd pass a full temple walk without a blister. A hush falls over the court as the pharaoh enters, flanked by 2 fan-bearers and the ever-present chamberlain, who you swear has perfected the art of gliding. The pharaoh is in an uncharacteristically cheerful mood, joking with one of his military advisors about last night's dream, which apparently involved a talking crocodile and a broken harp string. You've heard weirder. He climbs the dais with ease and takes a seat on the judging stool, a cushion-topped block carved with hieroglyphs of foot-shaped offerings. 2 attendants unfasten his current sandals and pass them to you. You turn them over in your hands. Smooth where pattern, no cracks. Heels slightly compressed. They've served well. You nod and set them aside reverently. You'll probably be tasked with preserving them in oil later. That's a whole thing. Now comes the dance. The apprentice steps forward, presenting the lapis pair with trembling hands. You can hear him praying under his breath. Probably not to the gods. More like to the head of the sandal guild, who will flay him if Pharaoh gets a blister. The sandals are slipped onto the royal feet. Everyone leans in. Pharaoh flexes his toes, frowns. Oh. He takes 3 steps across the platform, pauses, then reaches down and removes 1 sandal himself. Feels like I'm walking on beetle shells, he says flatly. The apprentice nearly faints. You kneel, accept the sandals, and with a non-committal murmur, set them aside. The no pile, the spiral pair is next. The assistant fastens them with care, hiding the frayed strap with a bit of clever finger placement. Pharaoh rises again, steps once. The toe strap pops with a pathetic little twang. Did it just snap? He asks. Symbolically, the assistant replies. You bite your lip to stifle a laugh. That pair joins the lapis in exile. You recommend the pomegranate-dyed ones with quiet confidence. The steward signals to try them next. Pharaoh slips them on, wiggles his toes, and smiles. He walks 3 full circuits of the dais, bounces slightly on the balls of his feet, turns, looks directly at the design apprentice and says, My feet feel like they've been blessed by Hathor herself. Applause breaks out. The apprentice weeps openly. You breathe out. Pharaoh sits back down and gestures for you. The heel support, he says, lifting his right foot slightly, feels more understanding. That's the pomegranate dye, you say calmly. It responds to warmth. He nods, clearly pleased. You make a mental note to congratulate whoever came up with that one, after making sure they're not already being promoted over you. The rejected sandals are collected, to be repurposed or gifted to lower-ranking nobles who enjoy second-hand splendor. Pharaoh leans forward and adds, Send a pair to the high priest. His heels squeak when he walks. Yes, my lord, the steward says, bowing. With the fitting over, the crowd disperses. You carefully place the approved pair in a sandal casket, an actual object, covered in linen and carved with lotus blossoms, and carry it off to the preservation chamber for blessing and documentation. On your way there, a scribe catches up to you. Nice work, he says a bit breathlessly. He smiled. That's rare. You shrug. Just helped him walk like a god again. You deposit the casket with the preservation clerk, who nods without looking up. She's already scribbling notes about sandal width, strap tension, and dye pH levels. Back in the courtyard, the sun is lower now. Shadows stretch long across the mosaics. You feel it in your shoulders, your knees, your temples, but there's no rest yet, because night brings its own kind of footsteps, and you've just received a whispered request. The queen's cousin wants her feet done, privately and discreetly. Twilight spreads across the palace like a silk veil, softening the outlines of statues, muting the gold inlaid into columns, and coaxing the perfume of evening jasmine into every hallway. It's the hour when shadows stretch and courtiers whisper more than they speak. The heat is finally breaking, but you're not headed to your mat just yet, because when a royal cousin requests a private pedicure discreetly, you don't say no. You don't even hesitate. You just nod, gather your satchel, and head toward the quiet east wing where the visiting relatives are housed in gilded obscurity. Her name is Lady Hannifer. You've only seen her once before, flanked by 2 fan-bearers and a personal harpist who seem to play just for her ankles. She's not in the line of succession, not really, but her proximity to the queen means she can do nearly anything, short of calling the sun down from the sky. And some days you suspect she might try that too. You're met at her doorway by a servant in deep blue linen who eyes your satchel like it might contain state secrets. "She's in the sunroom," he murmurs. "She wants no one else present." You nod and he lets you pass. The sunroom, ironically, is bathed in moonlight now. Cool breezes slip through open latticework, fluttering the thin curtains like lazy ghosts. A censer smolders faintly in the corner, trailing tendrils of sandalwood and cinnamon. Lady Hannifer reclines on a low divan, her legs stretched out and her feet resting on a cushion embroidered with scarabs and sacred eyes. She doesn't look up when you enter, but gestures toward the cushion with a languid flick of her ring-covered hand. "You're late," she says, "although you're not. I came as quickly as I was summoned, my lady." She smiles faintly. "That's what they all say." You kneel by her feet, setting down your satchel with practiced grace. Her toenails are painted already, but chipped. Her soles look dry, neglected, like she's been pacing, possibly brooding. You begin without a word, moistening a cloth with cool rosewater and gently cleansing her feet. She watches you from beneath her heavy coal-lined eyes. The silence between you is thick but not tense. After a long moment, she speaks again. "Do you enjoy your work?" A strange question in a palace full of servants who survive by never being too memorable. You pause. "When the feet are agreeable." She laughs. A real laugh, not the rehearsed court chuckle. "You're clever. No wonder the queen mentioned you." Your heart thuds, too loud. You focus intently on her second toe, trimming a hangnail with surgical precision. "Mentioned how? Why? I've always thought," she continues, "that those who work in silence hear more than most. Do you find that to be true?" Another dangerous question, wrapped in silk. You respond carefully. "I find that feet don't lie, my lady, but people do." She smiles again, then leans back against the divan. You file and smooth, moving from toe to toe, then working her arch with your balm. A blend tonight of calendula, fig sap, and a hint of mint. She exhales softly. The tension in her legs loosens. As you work, she speaks in a lower voice. "There's talk of a change coming, a shift in alliances. Some say the high priest has lost favor." You make no reply, but she watches your eyes. "Would you be surprised," she muses, "if the queen began favoring her cousin for certain ceremonies?" You dip your cloth in cool water, wring it out just so, and place it over the top of her foot. "I'm but a humble pedicurist, my lady. I serve where I'm assigned." She tilts her head. "And do you notice whose feet tremble and whose stride grows more confident?" You offer the ghost of a smile. "Every day." She seems pleased. You finish with a touch of scented oil, massaging it gently into the space between her toes. Her shoulders drop. She closes her eyes, fully reclining now. "You have a steady hand," she murmurs. "Years of practice," you reply. "Or a blessed charm," she says, glancing at your satchel, where the tiny amulet still jingles faintly with each movement. "Do you believe in those?" You consider your answer as you dry her feet with the edge of your tunic. "I believe in whatever keeps the blade from slipping." "Practical," she says with a satisfied sigh. "I like that." She sits up slowly, swinging her legs over the edge of the divan. Her toes gleam softly in the moonlight. "I think I shall request you again," she says, rising. You bow low, tucking your tools away in silence. Her servant reappears at the doorway as if summoned by thought alone. You follow him back through the hushed corridors of the East Wing, the air thick with secrets and cinnamon smoke. Historians still argue whether royal grooming sessions were moments of luxury or tools of court maneuvering. Some say beauty was a political act, painted nails a declaration, perfumed heels a power move. Others believe it was simpler. Feet get tired. Even royalty craves comfort. You suspect both are true. By the time you reach the main hall again, the moon has risen high, and the shadows have cooled to silver. You pass a quiet garden where a lute player plucks a slow, dreamy melody. No audience, just notes and moonlight. You're tired, more than tired. But before sleep, there's one last duty. A priest from the temple of Maat has requested foot balm for the morning ritual dancers. You're to prepare it tonight and deliver it by sunrise. No one said being a foot whisperer came with normal hours. You make your way toward the apothecary quarter of the palace, tucked beside the inner wall and always half hidden behind drifting clouds of fragrant smoke. This is where all the scented miracles happen: ointments, pastes, balms, oils, and questionable herbal teas that supposedly make you walk like R.A. himself. The chamber is dim and warm, lit by rows of floating oil lamps and a single skylight shaped like a lotus bud. Shelves line the walls, groaning under clay jars, alabaster pots, and tiny sacks tied with linen thread. The air smells like lavender, myrrh, crushed marjoram, and at least 3 ingredients you can never quite name but are probably blessed or cursed depending on who's mixing. You find your usual corner, beside the mortar station. Your satchel lands with a soft thud on the workbench, and you roll your shoulders with a quiet groan. This late, the apothecary is mostly empty, save for one elderly assistant snoring into a pile of dried mint leaves. You let him rest. Tonight's task: create the ceremonial balm for Maat's dancers. Their feet must move like whispers on marble, and if they cramp mid-spin during a temple ritual, someone usually blames the stars. Or the balm, sometimes both. You begin with your base, thickened almond oil, filtered until it shines. You warm it gently over a low flame, letting it melt into a golden pool. Next comes the calendula paste, your signature touch. It blends in slowly, the two forming a silky texture that catches the light like desert honey. Then the real work begins. You measure crushed fig seed for softness, mint extract for circulation, and a hint of frankincense for fragrance. Each ingredient is scooped, stirred, and stirred again until your arms ache in that strangely satisfying way that lets you know something good is happening. You pause to check the consistency. Perfect. It clings to the spoon without dripping, but it's still light enough to spread under the warmth of skin. You add the last ingredient, powdered blue lotus. Just a pinch. Too much and the dancers get dreamy. Too little and it smells like wax. You stir it in slowly, letting the scent bloom like a secret garden under your nose. Historians still argue whether such balms were considered medicine, magic, or merely vanity. Temple records describe foot salves for rituals as offerings to the gods through movement. Others suggest they were more practical. Keep the dancers from collapsing and nobody gets cursed. Fair enough. You pour the finished balm into 3 small alabaster jars, sealing each with a pressed linen square and a wax stamp bearing your personal mark. An abstract heel with 2 crossing lines. Simple, tidy, unmistakably yours. As you clean your tools, a voice drifts in from the doorway. Still working. You glance over. It's Recti, one of the linen folder apprentices. She carries a tray of folded cloths and a tired smile. Always, you murmur, wiping your spoon clean. She enters, setting the tray down nearby. I heard you saw Lady Hannifer tonight. You raise an eyebrow. Word travels. Faster than sandal straps unravel in the rain. She grins. Anything scandalous? You smile faintly. Only that her toes are dangerously symmetrical now. She laughs. Blasphemous. The 2 of you work in silence for a few minutes. She organizing embroidered wraps, you labeling balm jars. It's the kind of peaceful quiet that only happens when most of the palace is sleeping and the political air has cooled for the night. Eventually, Recti glances at your satchel and asks, "You ever get tired of it?" You pause. Of feet. Of being the invisible one who's always there. You consider. Sometimes. But then someone leaves the pavilion with a lighter step, and I think maybe that's enough. She nods slowly. That's very foot poet of you. I try. She yawns, stretches, and collects her tray. See you at first light, healer of heels. You too, folder of the folds. She disappears into the hallway with a rustle of linen and the echo of tired feet. You sit alone for a moment, looking at the balm jars lined up like silent promises. Each one will go to a dancer. Each dancer will move through sacred space, their steps weightless, their toes uncomplaining. And all because you were here, stirring by moonlight. You tuck the jars into a reed basket and cradle it against your chest. It's not heavy, but it feels important, maybe more than usual. The corridor outside is hushed, the oil lamps flickering like tiny stars caught in a breeze. You walk slowly, barefoot now, your own soles finally free from their bindings. As you pass through the tapestry hall, a breeze catches the hanging cloths, brushing your arm like a whispered blessing. You pause at a balcony that overlooks the main temple courtyard. Below, dancers rehearse by torchlight, slow, silent movements that resemble petals floating on water. You watch for a while, imagining their feet wrapped in your balm, moving painlessly across the stone. Feels good, feels seen. And with that, you turn and make your way back to your chamber, ready, almost for rest. But there's still the matter of the queen's hairdresser and her midnight heel emergency, because in this palace, feet never sleep for long. You're halfway to your sleeping mat, basket of balm jars still tucked under your arm, when the message arrives, delivered by a page barely old enough to pronounce ointment. He bows awkwardly, nearly tripping on his own robe. The queen's hairdresser requests your expertise, he announces, like it's a matter of national urgency. You raise an eyebrow. Midnight heel emergency? He nods, then adds solemnly. She stubbed it on a papyrus vase and refuses to limp before sunrise prayers. Of course. You sigh, hand the balm basket off to a passing steward, and pivot toward the queen's wing. Again, the hairdresser, Rihaya, is known across the palace not just for her intricate braids and scandalous winks, but for her refusal to tolerate even a single rough patch on her skin. A single blister might spiral into an emotional crisis, then a delay in royal hairstyling, and from there, chaos. You find her in the queen's auxiliary lounge, surrounded by empty goblets, discarded jewelry trays, and what appears to be a partially disassembled wig stand. She's seated on a plush stool, one leg propped up on a satin pillow. The affected heel is bandaged with more drama than medicine. You took your time, she declares. I came the moment I was summoned. Then the gods must have dragged you through every scented corridor on the way. You kneel, already reaching for your balm pot. Let's take a look at the afflicted deity. She huffs and extends her foot. The bandage slips off with a gentle tug, revealing a heel, slightly red, mildly offended, but still very much intact. It's angry, she says. It barked at me when I tried to stand. You nod solemnly, reaching for your soothing mint balm. Let's calm it down before it launches a full rebellion. You work slowly, spreading the balm in gentle circles. The tension melts from her shoulders, and her foot seems to settle into your palm like it's finally being listened to. Rihaya exhales with the dramatics of a court poet. You're wasted on royalty, she mutters. You should be tending gods. Divine feet come with too much paperwork, you reply. She snorts. As you finish the massage, wrapping her heel in a lavender-scented cloth, she glances around to make sure you're alone, then leans in. Between you and me, she whispers, there's going to be a shift in the morning procession. The queen plans to walk ahead of the high priest. Your hands freeze for the slightest second. That's a statement with weight. Ceremonial positions are no joke. Who walks in front of whom can alter temple dynamics, feasting hierarchies, even tax rulings. She's tired of being escorted. Rihaya continues. Wants to be the one doing the escorting for once. You nod slowly, pretending to focus on tightening the cloth. Sounds like her stride needs to be at full confidence, then. Exactly why I called you, Rihaya says with a grin. If her heel so much as squeaks, you'll hear about it before the gods do. Historians still debate the influence of minor court figures like hairdressers, cupbearers, and, yes, pedicurists. Some claim they were invisible, serving without sway. Others argue they were the true whisperers behind the throne, listening where others talked, tending to power at its most vulnerable points. You know better than to speak of it. You help Rihaya to her feet. She tests the heel carefully, then nods. You've done it again, foot mage. You bow. May your braids flow smoothly and your heels glide. She laughs and waves you off. You step back into the hallway, where the night is deep and still, save for the faint sound of sandals on polished stone and the distant plunk of a frog in the courtyard pond. You pass a pair of guards murmuring about stolen wine, a temple acolyte balancing a tray of moon-blessed scrolls, and an owl perched on a lintel, watching you like it knows your birth chart. By the time you reach your chamber, your limbs ache like carved wood left too long in the sun. You enter quietly. One roommate is asleep, snoring like a miniature drum. Another is sitting cross-legged, darning a hole in his sash with the concentration of a priest. He glances up. Still working. Still healing heels. You mutter, collapsing onto your mat. You ever dream of feet? He asks. Only the ones that chase me. You both chuckle. You loosen your sash, stretch your legs, and flex your toes. There's a new callus forming on your left thumb. A badge of honor, really. The oil lamp flickers. Outside, the moon slips behind a cloud, and the night deepens. You close your eyes, hoping foolishly for more than 3 hours of sleep. But just as you begin to drift, there's a knock. Soft, hesitant. You open one eye. It's a page. Again. Sorry, he whispers. There's a diplomat from Crete. He's very confused about sandal etiquette. You sigh, sit up, and reach for your satchel. Feet never rest. And neither, apparently, do you. The Cretan diplomat is waiting in one of the palace's guest chambers reserved for foreign dignitaries of note, which essentially means they're important enough to deserve murals, but not important enough to have their own kitchen staff. The murals in this particular room are mostly seascapes and dolphins, an olive branch to Cretan aesthetics that have always leaned heavily toward ocean-themed fever dream. You're led in by a sleepy-looking aide who yawns so widely his jaw cracks. He's very particular, the boy mutters as he disappears down the corridor. Perfect. Inside, the diplomat is pacing in soft, fur-lined sandals that clearly aren't Egyptian-made. His robe is a swirl of reds and indigos, and his beard is so waxed it could deflect a spear. When he sees you, he stops and clasps his hands dramatically, as though he's about to recite a monologue. You are the foot servant, yes? You nod. Pedicurist. Excellent. I require clarity. This, you've learned, is diplomat speak for I've offended someone and don't know how. You gesture to the floor cushions and kneel as he sits. He holds up one foot. They say I must not point this at anyone, but I do not know which part is considered offensive. The sole? The heel? Or just the entire thing? You suppress a smile. It's the sole. Turning the bottom of the foot toward someone is a sign of disrespect. He raises both eyebrows. Even during seated negotiations? Especially during seated negotiations. He groans and flops back slightly. That explains everything. The grain merchant left in a huff. I thought he just didn't like figs. You set down your satchel and begin inspecting his feet. They're surprisingly well kept, with nails lacquered in a faint coral pigment. Very on trend in the Aegean, you've heard. The skin, however, is dry. Island dwellers often underestimate how quickly desert air devours moisture. You begin with a gentle rinse of rose and sandalwood, wiping away dust and dried sea salt. As you work, he gestures vaguely at the sandals now lying beside him. They gave me those. Are they ceremonial? I think I wore them backwards. You inspect the pair. They're traditional double-strap leather, basic but functional. You do a quick calculation. You wore the right one on your left foot. Ha! I knew they felt argumentative. You can't help chuckling. You'll want to avoid wearing ceremonial pairs altogether unless invited. Some have meanings. Rank, region, sometimes even recent dreams. He blinks. Dream-based footwear? Pharaoh once wore lapis sandals after dreaming of a lion. No one dared contradict him, but we all understood. Historians still debate the symbolic function of footwear in court culture. Some suggest that colors and materials marked political moods, or even coded warnings. A scratched sandal sole, for instance, was once interpreted by a rival prince as a personal insult, He promptly withdrew trade agreements. Footwear diplomacy, it seems, is very real. You exfoliate gently, working a soft blend of fig seed oil and crushed hibiscus into the arch. The diplomat lets out a relaxed sigh. You know, he says, in Crete we worship a barefoot goddess. Every festival we go unshod. You nod. Here, the divine must tread softly, but never barefoot. Only cats and the occasional mad priest go unshod. Fascinating. He looks thoughtful. Maybe I'll pretend it was an intentional cultural gesture. Just avoid showing anyone your soles while explaining it. Noted. As you finish the massage, he regards you curiously. You're rather informed. For someone who kneels so much. You dry his feet with a fine linen cloth, then answer evenly, "It's amazing what people say when they think you're beneath them." He blinks once, then smiles faintly. Well said. You help him slip into the corrected sandals, right on right, left on left, dignity restored. He rises, gives a small experimental bounce, then bows with a flourish. May your hands never blister. May your heels never squeak. He exits with an odd grace, robes swirling behind him like a theatrical cloud. You're left in the room alone, the scent of hibiscus still clinging to your fingers. As you collect your tools, you pause for a moment and glance at the dolphin mural again. One of the painted creatures is leaping in an odd arc, mouth wide open, eyes vaguely menacing. You tilt your head. Definitely looks like it knows something. You leave the room quietly, shutting the door behind you with a soft thud. The hallway is empty, quiet, cloaked in torchlight and drifting dust. Your feet move almost on their own now, back toward the central court. It's deep night. Most of the palace sleeps, even the geese. You pass a window overlooking the Nile. The moon is high, silver rippling on the water's surface like oil on bronze. A single boat glides silently by, its oarsmen rowing in perfect silence. For the first time all day, you let yourself breathe slowly, fully, all the way down to your toes. And just when you think, maybe now I can rest, you hear it. A voice behind you. You, Pedicurist. You turn, eyebrows already raised. It's a palace guard, armor slightly crooked, holding out a scroll. Lady Casa, he says, breathless. She's requesting toenail detailing. With lapis. You blink. Is this a prank? He shrugs. She says it's urgent. Of course it is. You take the scroll, sigh, and turn toward the courtyard once again. Feet, after all, don't know what time it is. But you do, and it's always time to serve. Lady Casta's quarters are tucked behind the temple garden, shaded by a canopy of flowering acacia trees and adorned with wind chimes that clink gently in the night breeze. The sound is soft, calming, though you suspect it's meant less for ambience and more to drown out any whispered conversations that might float too far. You're escorted to her antechamber by two perfumed handmaidens, neither of whom seem particularly eager to make eye contact. That's your first clue. The second clue is the scroll she sent, sealed in blue wax with a crescent symbol, a sign that the request is personal and probably comes with gossip. When you step inside, Lady Casa is reclining on a couch draped in silk, a small lapdog curled beside her like an overly expensive pillow. Her toenails gleam faintly even in the lamplight. She's already bathed, oiled, and clearly expecting not just a pedicure, but a performance. You took your time, she says without looking up. I was with a diplomat who'd insulted someone's soul with his soles. You reply evenly. She smirks. Yes, I heard about that. Of course she did. You kneel beside her feet and unpack your toolkit. She wiggles her toes expectantly. They're already painted in a soft gold, but chipped at the edges. Unacceptable for someone who spends half her time parading across polished marble and the other half reclining where people can see the soles of her feet. You wanted lapis? You ask, setting aside your obsidian blade. Lapis, yes, and 2 crescents per big toe. You blink. Crescent moons. No, crescent frogs. She rolls her eyes. Yes, moons. Symbol of the goddess. I'm making a statement. Of course she is. You stir the lapis paste gently. Ground stone mixed with clear resin, a tiny touch of honey, and the smallest trace of sesame oil for shine. It's thick, brilliant, and expensive. If you spilled this, your grandchildren would feel the shame. As you begin filing her nails smooth, she sighs deeply. I assume you've heard about the high priest. You pause. That he's losing favor? She nods. Pharaoh isn't pleased. Apparently, someone was caught snooping through the offering records. Grain inventories don't just vanish. You file in silence. Not because you don't care, but because you absolutely do. And the queen? You ask casually. Lady Cassa smiles like a cat that's just found a loose bird feather. The queen is adjusting. She's speaking more with her cousin. Hanyefer, that name again. As you polish the nails, applying a smooth underlayer of resin, you ask, is there a reason for the crescent moons tonight? She tilts her head. Because I may or may not be attending a private ceremony in the goddess's honor. One that the high priest is not invited to. Subtle as a sandal strap to the face. Historians still debate whether these nighttime ceremonies, quiet, invitation-only rituals held beneath the moon, were truly political, religious, or both. Some scrolls describe them as hearth gatherings, where alliances were made in whispers over honey cakes and oaths were sealed with perfumed wine. Others dismiss them as noble indulgence. You suspect the truth lies, as always, in the feet. Who walks where and when. You begin painting the lapis layer with a tiny porcupine hairbrush, shaping the crescent moons as evenly as possible. The paste catches the lamplight, shimmering like a desert sky. Lady Cassa watches you work. You're quite good at this, she murmurs. I've had practice. Still, she says, voice softening. It must be odd, kneeling before people all day, learning everything, saying nothing. You glance up briefly. Sometimes the silence says more than words. She leans back, expression unreadable. Careful. That kind of wisdom could get you noticed. You finish the crescents, inspecting them from every angle. Perfect. Symmetrical. Politely threatening in a quiet lunar sort of way. She lifts one foot to the light, admiring it. Exquisite. You wrap her feet lightly in silk to preserve the paint, then begin repacking your tools. Before you can stand, she adds, almost as an afterthought, if anything shifts in the temple in the coming days, remember this night. You look up. Remember which direction the moon faces, she finishes. You bow. I will. She dismisses you with a wave, and you retreat silently into the corridor, heart thudding with a mix of pride and dread. The political tides are changing, and they're being charted in pigment and polish. Outside, the sky is darker than before. The moon is high, yes, but behind thin clouds now, flickering like a candle behind gauze. You return to your chamber walking slowly, satchel heavier than it should be. Your roommates are asleep now, scattered like laundry across the room. You set your tools down as quietly as possible, lay on your mat, and stare at the cracked ceiling for a moment. Was that just a ceremonial pedicure? Or a declaration? And are you now part of it? Feet, you think, should really come with disclaimers. Morning comes not with a gentle breeze or the chirp of birds, but with a temple bell tolling 3 sharp notes, each one less forgiving than the last. You sit up groggily on your mat, your spine audibly protesting. For a moment, you consider pretending to be ill, just long enough to avoid the inevitable flood of foot emergencies that sunrise seems to provoke. But no, you're in too deep. You've seen too many heels, heard too many whispers, and, worst of all, painted lapis moons that might now be steering religious power plays. So you rise. You shuffle into the courtyard, where linen robes flutter on drying lines and sleepy servants blink at the sun like startled owls. You're halfway through a bowl of cold barley mash when a runner arrives. You're summoned, he says, to the house of the lesser shrine. You frown. That's not on your usual route. The lesser shrine is a small, rarely used temple built into a recess of the palace wall. Most people forget it exists unless they're hiding something. You arrive to find a cluster of dancers preparing for the Ma'at Dawn ritual. Their bodies are already painted in soft pastels, shoulders dusted with gold, palms inked in pale blue. They move with the unhurried grace of people who've been stretching since before the stars faded. You set your basket of balm down and open each jar with care. The scent that rises, lotus, almond, and blue fig, is earthy and sweet, grounding. One by one, the dancers approach, barefoot and silent. You kneel before each and apply the balm with rhythmic strokes. Heel to arch, arch to ball, ball to toe. You breathe in their calm. For a moment, the world shrinks to nothing but breath and skin and soft sandals brushing polished stone. The oldest dancer, a woman with silver-dusted braids, murmurs. The gods speak through motion, but they whisper through pain. You nod without responding, coating her heel with balm. You know that pain is how you hear things others don't. Historians still argue whether temple dancers were priestesses or performers. Some claim their movements were codified prayers, each step a syllable in a language the gods remembered. Others suggest they were elite servants, graceful, yes, but trained in the politics of proximity. You believe both. You've seen how they move between nobles during ceremonies, collecting praise, passing notes, and sometimes offering warnings with a subtle turn of the foot. As you finish the last dancer, a hush falls over the shrine. A priestess enters, tall, robed in white, eyes coal-lined like a hawk. She nods to the dancers and then to you. Your work will carry their steps. You bow your head. May their feet not falter. She vanishes into the inner sanctum. You watch as the dancers begin their procession, feet gliding across the marble like smoke. There's a power in it, quiet, immense. You sit back, suddenly aware of just how many times your hands have guided moments like this, and how little anyone outside the temple walls knows. The sun climbs. You head back toward the main palace, only to be intercepted by a familiar figure. Murdy, the sandal tailor, holding two broken sawls like a criminal presenting evidence. These were for the queen's cousin, she groans. The strap snapped mid-stride. She says it's sabotage. Did it break near the crescent moons? Murdy narrows her eyes. How did you know? You sigh and take the sandals. They're gold-leafed, stiff, and useless. Tell her I'll come after mid-meal. She needs footwork prep anyway. You spend the next hour triaging sandal injuries, preparing balm for a courier with sunburnt ankles, and gently refusing a request to polish a marble footstool for the spiritual energy of the sawls. The requester was very serious. The stool was very not. Just before midday, a scroll arrives. It's from the queen herself. The royal inspection will include servant quarters. All palace hands are to be clean, presentable, and unbandaged. You glance down at your own cracked heels. Great. You clean yourself quickly. Sponge bath, fresh tunic, oil behind the ears. Your toolkit gleams. You place it neatly at the foot of your mat, where it will appear dutiful but not boastful. The queen arrives with a quiet entourage. 2 advisors, 1 bodyguard, and, unsurprisingly, Lady Hannifer. Her hair is coiled like a serpent, and her sandals look newly repaired. No sign of the broken strap. As they enter the servant hall, silence falls like a curtain. You bow deeply, holding the position until they pass. Ah, the queen says, stopping. You're the pedicurist. You rise slowly. Yes, your majesty. She nods. Your name is being spoken, in multiple wings. That could mean anything. You smile gently. I trust my work pleases. It does, she says. And it listens. A pause. Then she moves on. Hannifer casts you the tiniest smirk as she passes. The inspection continues. You sit back on your mat, heart thudding behind your ribs. You're being watched, not for failure but for influence. When the queen knows your name, your job becomes more than balm and blades. It becomes strategy. Feet may be beneath the throne, but they still walk it where it needs to go. And you're holding the reins. The queen's inspection leaves the palace humming like a beehive in high summer, buzzing with whispers, soft footfalls, and the scrape of sandals hurriedly polished to within an inch of their soles. For a few dizzy hours, you slip into an odd twilight of both visibility and invisibility. People nod at you now, not just fellow servants, but linen clerks, sandal makers, even a junior scribe who offered you half a fig and the phrase, "Your reputation precedes you." You're still not sure what that means for someone who trims cuticles. But by sunset, the tide shifts again. A temple courier arrives at the servants' hall with a sealed note and a wrapped bundle. "For the pedicurist," he says, with the solemnity of someone delivering a tomb offering. You open the note. A personal offering of thanks. "Your balm carried our feet well. May your own steps be light, priestess of Ma'at." Inside the bundle is a pair of finely woven reed slippers. Simple but elegant, light as air. You almost don't want to wear them. You almost cry. You don't, though, because your next appointment arrives before you can even take them out of the linen. It's the vizier himself. He arrives without escort, wearing soft sandals and a face carved from granite. "Privately," he says, and gestures toward a quiet alcove. You follow. There, in the dim light of a flickering oil lamp, he removes his sandals, sits, and extends his feet. His toenails are immaculate, his heels calloused but not cracked. This isn't a cry for help. It's a pretext. "I trust," he says slowly, "that you are discreet." "Yes, my lord." He studies you, "and that you listen well." "I've been trained to." A pause. Then listen. You keep your hands moving, filing, cleaning, oiling, while he speaks. There are shifts in the court. The queen tightens her circle. The high priest is on unsure footing. You risk a glance upward. "So I've heard. I've advised Pharaoh to tread carefully." Literally. He smiles faintly. Foot pun. From the vizier. "The world must be ending." You nod, applying balm. "Then may his steps be well tended." "Indeed," he says, then adds almost idly, "There may be changes in the temple hierarchy. Those who move quietly may be moved upward. Your hands don't stop, but your pulse does a little hop." He says nothing more. When you finish, he rises, straightens his robe, and nods once. "You do good work." You bow. "I serve the feet that carry the realm." He walks away, sandals whispering across the stone. You sit for a moment, unsure whether to feel proud or deeply alarmed. You return to your chamber in a haze. The reed slippers await you on your mat. You place them gently beside your pillow. They look like they'd float in water. You lie down at last, back aching, fingers sore, brain buzzing like a cicada. The lamp flickers. The sounds of the palace fade. Servants murmuring, doors clicking shut. The faint call of a heron somewhere near the riverbank. You close your eyes, and for once, you dream not of calluses or cracked heels, but of moonlit floors and the soft hush of perfect sandals crossing marble, of whispers passed between footfalls, of power that moves in silence, of all the feet that have passed through your hands, and where they might go next. Now just rest. Let the echoes of sandals fade behind you. Let the murmur of incense and river reeds lull your thoughts into stillness. You've walked the corridors of power, seen the undercurrent of a kingdom through its halls. You've witnessed quiet revolutions carried out on oiled heels and whispered diplomacy tucked into nail beds and footpaths. Breathe in, slowly, like the Nile at dawn. Feel the weight in your limbs dissolve. Your hands, no longer kneading, can curl into the softest stillness. Your feet, which carried you through every shadowed hallway and marble corridor, can now uncurl, warm beneath linen. Let the rustle of acacia leaves drift past like a breeze in the mind. Let the moonlight soften the edges of memory. There's no scroll to read, no sandal to inspect, no gossip to weigh. Just silence, wrapping you like a temple shroud. And with every breath, imagine a rhythm, like your own steps across polished stone. 1, 2, 1, 2. A quiet march into deeper calm. You are not the pedicurist now. You are just a body resting, floating like lotus petals downriver, guided by dreams. And tomorrow, let tomorrow walk its own path. For now, sleep, softly,